It was supposed to be an ordinary day. The sun was shining, people were going about their business, and the city streets were as busy as ever. But what happened next would leave everyone who witnessed it in complete shock. Imagine two young black women, twin sisters, walking down the street, laughing, chatting, completely unaware that trouble was lurking just around the corner. They seemed like any other pair of teens you'd see on the street, stylish, confident, and minding their own business. But what nobody knew was that these two weren't just regular girls. They were elite special forces operatives, trained in ways most people couldn't even imagine. Yet from the outside, no one could guess the kind of power they carried within them. As they made their way to a nearby cafe, a group of guys leaning against a wall took notice. At first it was just a few looks, some whispers. But as the sisters passed, the group suddenly surrounded them, throwing out mean comments and mocking laughs. They thought they had found easy targets, two young black women alone. What they didn't know was that these sisters had been through battles tougher than anything these guys could throw at them. Still, the twins kept calm, trying to ignore the rude remarks, hoping to avoid unnecessary drama. But when one of the guys stepped too close and said something that crossed every line, everything started to change. Meanwhile, not too far from there, on a crowded city bus, another story was unfolding. A black teenage boy sat quietly by the window, his headphones on, lost in his own world. He was just trying to get home from school, probably thinking about homework or his friends. But when a pregnant white woman climbed onto the bus, struggling to balance herself as she held onto the pole, something inside him stirred. Without a second thought, he stood up and offered her his seat. Something simple, something kind, something that should be normal. She looked at him, surprised and grateful, and sat down. But as the bus rattled down the street, she pulled out a piece of paper, scribbled something on it, and when she stood to leave, she slipped it into his hand. What was written on that note would change his life forever, but he had no idea yet. Back on the street, tension was rising. The twins exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them, as only twins can do. Should they show these guys who they really were? Or should they walk away, keeping their identities secret? The gang closed in, laughing louder, thinking they were in control. But the sisters knew something these guys didn't. When you mess with the wrong people, you might just get more than you bargained for. And as one of the men reached out to grab one of the twins, that's when everything shifted. But how it would play out, no one could predict. And as for the boy on the bus, when he finally opened that note, sitting on a park bench with the paper trembling in his hand, what he read would leave him staring in disbelief. His whole world flipped upside down in just a few words. Who was this woman? And why had she chosen him for something so unexpected? Both these stories are about to collide in ways no one sees coming. Two worlds, two acts of courage, and two moments that will change lives forever. But what happens next? You'll have to wait and see. The city around them moved like nothing was wrong. People walking by, cars honking in the distance, and yet for the twin sisters, time felt like it had slowed down. The men surrounding them had no idea who they were messing with. To these guys, it was just another day, another chance to pick on people they thought were weak. But what they didn't know was that these sisters had spent years training in the toughest special forces unit, learning skills that most soldiers could only dream of. Still, despite all that power, the twins weren't the type to go looking for trouble. They had made a promise to each other a long time ago to keep a low profile, to never use their training unless they absolutely had to. But right now, that promise was hanging by a thread. As the taller twin, Nia, shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her sharp eyes scanned the group in front of them. She wasn't just looking at their faces. She was reading their body language, picking out who would make the first move, who was just pretending to be tough and who might actually be dangerous. Her sister Naya stood slightly behind her, calm but alert, her hand casually resting near her bag, which held more than just a wallet and phone. The guys kept talking, throwing out words that stung, trying to get a reaction. But Naya and Naya didn't flinch. They had faced far worse than a group of guys trying to act tough on a city street. Still, Nia knew that if they didn't walk away soon, things could get out of hand fast. At the same time, across town, the boy from the bus, Jamal, sat on that park bench turning the note over and over in his hands. His mind was racing. The words on the note were short, but powerful. "Call this number. You have no idea how much you've helped me today. I want to help you too." Below the message was a phone number. Jamal stared at it, his heart pounding. Who was this woman? Why would she want to help him? All he had done was give up his seat, something his mom always taught him was the right thing to do. But now he couldn't shake the feeling that something way bigger was going on. Jamal didn't have an easy life. His mom worked 2 jobs just to keep them afloat, and he was used to people overlooking him, assuming he had nothing to offer. But now, for the first time in a long while, someone had noticed him, really noticed him, and that feeling was both exciting and scary. He pulled out his old phone, the screen cracked in one corner, and stared at the number again. Should he call? What if it was a trick? What if this woman was part of something he didn't understand? But deep down, something told him this was real, and that this small act of kindness might just change everything. Meanwhile, back on the street, things were heating up. One of the men, the one who seemed to be the leader, stepped closer to Nia, a smug grin on his face. "What's the matter? Cat, got your tongue?" he sneered, clearly expecting her to back down. But Nia just looked at him, her face calm, her eyes sharp. She could take him down in a second if she wanted to, but she didn't move. Instead, she glanced at Nia, giving her a tiny nod that only her sister would notice. It was a silent signal. Stay ready, but don't strike yet. The leader didn't like being ignored. He took another step forward, now right in Nia's space, and reached out like he was going to grab her arm. In that split second, Nia's entire body tensed, her mind calculating a dozen ways to stop him before he even touched her. But she held back, waiting to see if he'd go through with it. Her sister, Nia, subtly shifted her stance, ready to back her up in an instant. Around them, the other guys were laughing, egging their friend on, thinking this was all some kind of game. But what would happen if they pushed too far? That was a question nobody wanted to find out. Or maybe they did, and that was the problem. Back at the park, Jamal was still sitting there, when his phone buzzed in his hand. For a moment, he just stared at the screen, confused. It was an unknown number, but something told him it wasn't random. His hands were sweating as he swiped to answer the call. "Hello," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "Is this Jamal?" a soft voice asked on the other end. It was her, the woman from the bus. His heart skipped a beat. Yeah, it's me," he replied, unsure what else to say. "I'm so glad you answered," she said warmly. "I know this is strange, but I meant what I wrote. You helped me more than you know today, and I want to do something for you in return. Can we meet? Somewhere safe, public." Jamal hesitated. He didn't know her at all, but there was something in her voice, something real and honest, that made him want to trust her. "Okay," he finally said. "Where?" As they worked out a place to meet, Jamal couldn't help but wonder what she meant by help him. Was she rich? Did she want to give him money? Or was it something else, something deeper? Either way, he knew he couldn't back out now, not when something told him this was his chance to change his life. Meanwhile, Nia and Nia were still facing off with the gang. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. As the leader's hand got closer to Nia, her eyes locked on his, daring him to make that final move. She could feel her sister ready to spring into action at any second. But still, they waited, knowing that once they crossed that line, there was no turning back. And even though these men had no idea who they were dealing with, Nia and Nia knew the risks. Revealing their true skills could mean exposing themselves, their past, everything they had worked to keep hidden. But would they have a choice if these men wouldn't let them go? Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed faintly, but nobody on that block seemed to care. The city kept moving, unaware of the storm brewing on this quiet street corner. And as Jamal stood up from the park bench, tucking the note into his pocket, heading to meet the mysterious woman. He had no idea that his path was about to cross with the twins, in a way that would bring all their lives crashing together. Because sometimes fate works in strange ways, bringing together people who were never meant to meet, in moments that can change everything. What would happen when Jamal met the woman who had handed him that note? Who was she really? And what secret was she carrying? And what about Nia and Nia? Would they have to reveal their true identities to save themselves? Or was there something even bigger at play, something none of them could see coming? The answers were just around the corner. But for now, all that remained was the tension, the unknown, and the feeling that something huge was about to happen.